Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the LinkedIn Agency Conclave powered by Exchange for Media. My name is Santosh Krishnamurthy, and I'm the head of the agencies for LinkedIn in India. We are really excited to have you all today. Thank you so much for taking out time and coming and seeing us. Agency Conclave, like I mentioned, this is the first ever Agency Conclave in India, originally designed to be an on-ground event. We thought we'll come and see you, shake hands, share some stories. I'm sure every one of us has some or the other inspirational stories in the last couple of years. Things have changed personally and professionally. Professionally, it has changed in the last 4-5 years, where we've seen that the digital marketing has taken a huge leap, and we thought that we will address all that in today's conclave. We have 1.5 hours with us, and we have a packed agenda. I'm really excited by the kind of conversation we are going to hear today from the agency ecosystem leaders, as well as from the LinkedIn leadership. At the same time, we are really excited that we are going to get some nuggets from the leaders to how to look forward and see that what's in store for us. But with that, I'm really proud to introduce you to the team, the agency team of the LinkedIn Marketing Solution in India. Can I have a slide, please? Yes, perfect. So this is your agency team in India. Like I said, I'm Santosh. I head the agencies. I have Vijit Shetty joined with me. Vijit is the agency lead based out of Bombay, takes care of holding companies. And I have Harry Sangha, who is the independent agency lead based in Delhi. We are really happy to take any questions during the conclave if you have, or after that also you want to reach out to us. You can look for us at the LinkedIn. Send us the connection, and we'll be very happy to start the conversation. The team has put this conclave together to share the knowledge and to learn from the leaders from us. With that, I would just like to deep dive on the agenda. Can I have the agenda slide, please? Perfect. We'll start with the macro trends, which actually is going to define the next probably 10 years. From the B2BI Institute, which is a think tank of LinkedIn. Who better than Alex to take that? Alex Aboy is the Director of Agency and Channel Sales for APAC, based out of Singapore. Post that, we have a conversation which we all are very interested about in today's scenario, which is the trust-based marketing and how the leaders are looking at post-pandemic recovery. We have Prashant Kumar, the CEO of South Asia Group M. We fondly know him as PK. We're very grateful that he actually took out time to speak to us. Sachin Sharma, who's the Director of Enterprise LinkedIn Marketing Solution India, and Naval, co-founder of Exchange for Media, will be speaking to these two gentlemen. And I'm sure we will get a lot of insight how leadership has looked during pandemic, talking to their customers, talking to their own people. Post that, brand marketing is something which we have always been talking about, the top of the funnel marketing. We wanted to actually get an agency's point of view. Manoj Rejwani will be the session chair. Manoj is the Director of Mid-Market SMB at LinkedIn Marketing Solution India. He will be talking to Vinod Thadani, the Chief Digital Growth Officer of Dentsu Media and the CEO of iProspect. Chandni Shah, the founder and the Chief Operating Officer of Kinect. Aditi Mishra, the Chief Strategy Officer of Lodestar, and Bharat Khatri, who has just taken over as the Chief Digital Officer of APAC Omnicom. What I'm more excited about this group is that this group is actually going with a very diverse knowledge and diverse experiences. They are going to really give us most of the point of view, all about the agency's point of view, which will help us. We are okay with question and answers. Please let us know. With that, I think I would like to call upon Alex to tell us what to look forward in the next 10 years, in the decade in 2030. Over to you, Alex.
Thank you, Santosh, for this great introduction. I'm delighted to welcome everybody to the very first India Agency Conclave organized by LinkedIn. I'm excited to be introducing some of the biggest trends uncovered by LinkedIn B2B Institute, which are going to help accelerate business-to-business relationship. We've worked with some of the brightest marketing minds in the world to enable marketers to deliver more value. I'm Alex Sibois. I'm the APAC head of agency and channel sales. And for the next 20 minutes, I will present to you 3 of those trends. There will be mega trends, which we believe are the most impactful and contrarian trends. And we will invest in those trends in the next 10 years. And we're hoping that these will become references to the B2B marketing world. So let me share a little bit of context to start with to set us for success. So marketers often ask the same questions. What is everyone else doing? This is actually the wrong questions. What you should be asking is, what is everyone not doing yet? If you're looking at the matrix, you will see that you can be either right or wrong. And you can have consensus with everybody, or you can be contrarian against the people. If you're wrong and you're not going anywhere. If you're right, while you have consensus, this is great, but ultimately you're not delivering much value. What you want to do is be right and be contrarian, so you can foresee the trends before everybody else. So at LinkedIn B2B Institute, what we've been doing in the last 5 years is just exactly that, of defining those biggest trends in the market, which, although they may not be widely used today, we believe they will become the benchmark of B2B marketing in the long term, in the next 10 years. And that's where we're trying to basically share those discoveries with every one of you today. So the 3 biggest market trends that I would like to cover today with you are the most durable and the most contrarian. We're talking about the war on brand, blockbuster marketing, and the death of hyper-targeting. If you follow Jeff Bezos, you may have noticed that often he's been asked the same question: what will change in 10 years? And this is actually something he doesn't want to answer, because his reasoning is very simple. The only way to plan and build a performing business, future success, hypergrowth, is by planning based on what will not change. So this is what we're going to do with our trends, assuming that these will not change and are the consistent conundrum for your future B2B marketing strategies. So let's start with the first trend, the war on brand. And this trend is actually all about the right balance between short-term activation and long-term branding. If you're considering short-term activation, which will deliver its full potential roughly over a period of 6 months, you will have great results very, very quickly, but over time, after 6 months, not much more will be delivered. Whereas while brand marketing starts delivering its value, longer term, this is where you're going to see a real difference. Now, the big question is, who are the marketers who actually look at their campaigns and the performance that they generate beyond 6 months? Actually, our research has uncovered that no more than 4% of B2B marketers are actually measuring beyond 6 months. And consequently, brand marketers are actually losing the budget battle, because 95% of the budgets used are actually performance-based budgets, mostly based on CPC. So we've looked for the right balance between brand and activation budgets. And we've realized that we're roughly at 50% on each side, with a slight benefit to the activation side. But if you're considering the current trends, B2B buyers are mostly now doing their own research. And what they tend to do is they look for the brands that they are already familiar with. Therefore, this is becoming much more important today for brands to overly invest on brand marketing to emerge and have greater visibility and greater results over time. So if we're looking at the different benefits that each type of marketing delivers, and if we're looking at the brand benefits, actually, we're seeing that both brand and activation deliver short-term sales. That's a given. But over time, brand marketing is actually delivering much more, a greater number of benefits, long-term sales and pricing power and so on. I will not cover all those benefits today for the sake of remaining within time, but I will invite you to go to b2binstitute.org and download the full report. You will have all the details for all those different benefits. So let's concentrate on the first three benefits. So benefit number one, short-term sales. Here, what you need to look into is basically how much value you can generate and the multiplying factor when you are marrying brands with acquisition companies. This is actually an existing case from a client who run advertising on LinkedIn. And we realized that by coupling brand activity with acquisition strategy, the conversion rate was increased by a factor of 6x. This is pretty big, and this is something to always remember, because you're missing out if no branding budget are actually associated with your acquisition activities. Benefit number two. You all marketers, we all know the very standard mental model that is the conversion funnel. You've got the top of funnel, you've got the bottom of funnel, but I'd like to invite you to flip that funnel on its side in order to reveal the extent and the importance of the time in that process. If you're looking at the bottom of the funnel, actually that will allow you to target, let's say if we're in the data cloud marketing service industry, maybe you have a potential of 20 clients. This is what we would call the in-market buyers. You know them, you will intend to reach out to them and sell to them. This is known territory. Now, in order to have growth over time, the only way is to grow the number of potential accounts. Here we're talking about 200 accounts, and for that you need to dramatically increase your branding budgets over a much longer period of time, and this is what we call out-of-market buyers. Now, the interesting thing about this model is that one will define the current cash flows, and the second one will define the future cash flows, which is always key elements to consider when you're talking to your finance people or your CFO, because this will talk to them, and this will support your marketing strategy in a very effective way and concrete way. Benefit number three, pricing power. Strong brands can actually raise prices. The stronger your brand is, and the more leadway you have on playing on certain key parameters to increase the profitability of your brand. Price is one, sales volume, fixed costs, variable costs, all of these levers can actually be tweaked around to change and increase your profitability in a meaningful way. So this was the trend number one. Trend number two, blockbuster marketing. Marketing people talk a lot about creativity. And they always think about how they can value their creations. Now, there is no better company than Walt Disney to actually look into how creatives are being used to deliver value over time. We think that a company like Walt Disney is a very good benchmark to apply certain principles to the B2B marketing world. Let me show you what are those different principles that could apply to the B2B marketing, which help Walt Disney be successful the way how they are today. 4 of them. One is big bets. I'm not talking about small bets, we're talking about big bets. Number 2, all content, all recipes are actually the best ones. This is surprising familiarity. Number 3, creativity is actually something that Disney is not working towards so much because they don't want to change the old recipe, the old content so much. So this is what we call consistent distinctiveness. And 4th, we're talking about how you leveraging the content, create merchandising, and deliver, distribute via multiple number of media platforms. This is what we call total merchandising. So let's go to the first principle, the big bets. The fundamental idea is that small bets are risky. The bigger your bets are, and the more return they will generate. And if we're looking for the biggest blockbusters of the last 20 years, which are listed here, you will notice that actually the smallest investment have delivered the smallest return, whereas the biggest investment have delivered consistently greater return from a ratio of 1 to 6, that much. Second principle, surprising familiarity. If you're looking at the list of all the biggest, highest grossing movies of all time, you will see that the majority of them are actually, again, born out of old content, old recipes. They're all sequels and prequels. This is what works the best. And this is the reason why Hollywood today has shifted towards a sequel model. This is what works the best. And if we're looking at one of the best B2B marketer in the market today, Salesforce, this is exactly what they're doing. With their state of sales report, this is the same recipe over and over again, just different data every year. Principle number 3, consistent distinctiveness. If you're looking at the different campaigns of Salesforce, this is the same sort of creativity, the same two-tone blue shade, the same raccoon kids icon, and the same wording. This is the same creative model. If you look at those ads, you know this is Salesforce. It cannot be any other CRM company. Principle number 4, total merchandising. The same creative are used across different channels. This is what pays off. And if you're looking at the spread of the revenue of Disney, you can realize very easily that actually not the revenue from movies are the biggest ones, but the one coming from toys. So they are milking the same model, and they're leveraging creative and different media platforms to the fullest. And the same way, that's what Salesforce has been doing. Same creative, different channels. That's trend number 2. Finally, trend number 3, the death of hyper-targeting. We've all been talking a lot about how to target the best individuals at the right time, at the right place. Well, I'm sorry to say it, but I think this is going to change. In the next decades, this is going to shift. Today, B2B is mostly a niche and a very specific hyper-targeting model. B2C, broader targeting model, but this is going to change. We believe that over the next 10 years, B2C will target even more broadly than today to accommodate the ever faster changing trends and audiences, whereas B2B will still require some level of targeting, but will require some different type of targeting. Here we're talking about buying category targets. So let's look into it. So we've got different assumptions that we're going to cover, which were actually supporting hyper-targeting model, but let me explain to you why we think those assumptions are actually not valid anymore. Stable buying committee. Well, if you consider all the people involved in the buying process, those individuals are actually moving targets, even more so today. Everybody changes jobs, industries, companies more and more often. So today, the marketing director may have been before an agency director, for example. The current CEO previously was a finance manager. The current IT decision maker was maybe a junior IT person. The latest research that we have uncovered from our member base is that 54%, nothing less than 54% of the LinkedIn members have changed jobs, company, industry year over year. This is a very fast moving network of people that you still need to target. And so you need to do very broad targeting to capture those individuals. Assumption number 2, only buyers matter. Well, they couldn't be any more wrong by assuming the same. Influencers today around the buyers are everywhere. Think about the partners, think about your employees, think about the media, think about the clients. There is a plethora of influencers everywhere, and this cannot be ignored. So in the B2C world, they have to target very broadly their category of buyers. This is the very nature of mass marketing. This is how it is. No other way. In the B2B world, what you want to do is actually target 100% of the potential category buyers, nothing less, 100%. Obviously, you don't want to target everyone, because in the case of IBM, for example, we know that not everybody will want or will be able to buy IBM, so there is no logic in targeting a broader scope, but you will need to cover 100% of those category buyers. This is where you're going to have the greatest return. Assumption number 3. Here, what you need to understand is basically by doing hyper-targeting, unlike a lot of people assume, you're not going to save money. This is not the best strategy for it. There are 3 types of targeting. There is no targeting at all, with lowest CPM level, very high level of wastage. You have a broader targeting level, which is midway, and you have hyper-targeting, which is the most expensive activity. Actually, the upfront investment for hyper-targeting, this is the very reason why ultimately this is the most costly exercise of all. So broad targeting is the right middle ground to exercise your B2B activity. So these are the 3 trends that I wanted to present to you. And I would like to finish this demonstration with one slide, which I think is probably very most important graph of the B2B marketing industry today, which is basically the model of the category rich is the single greatest predictor of sales. If you're looking at the difference between share of market and share of voice, if you're growing a brand, you're going to lead a share of markets, and you're going to intend to grow as much as possible your share of voice. But here is the catch. If your share of voice is smaller than your share of market, your brand is going to shrink. Now, on the other hand, if your share of voice is actually bigger than your share of market, your brand is going to grow. This is a fundamental concept that every marketer in B2B needs to remember. The more clients you have, the more clients you need to acquire to continue growing. This is obvious, but this is the reality today, and this is how marketing needs to be done in B2B. So growth is a function of effective share of voice, which is a difference between the share of voice and the share of market. Food for thought. So how can I apply these trends? Number one, do invest in brand building. This is the only way to deliver future growth. Number two, invest in blockbuster franchises. This is how you're going to deliver value from your creative. Number three, invest in category targeting. If you want to be the leader of your own category, this is the way to go. So hopefully you found this information valuable. I would like to invite you to visit the b2binstitute.org website, where you'll be able to download the full report and all the other 30 trends that were delivered by this think tank. And with that, I will pass the baton to Nawal Aouja, co-founder of Exchange for Media, who's going to moderate the fire chat on the topic of trust-based marketing and post-pandemic recovery. Over to you, Nawal.
Good afternoon and welcome to the first edition of the LinkedIn Exchange for Media India Agency Conclave. I'm here to talk to two gentlemen today. India CEO of Group M, the South Asia CEO of Group M, Prashant Kumar is with me, and is Sachin Sharma is the India Director for Marketing Solutions for LinkedIn. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me. Thank you for taking time out. The agency world has gone a significant transformation in the last year and a half, especially due to the pandemic. And today's conversation is going to be centered around what's happening in the agency, the marketing ecosystem, how media partners are helping clients and agencies reach out customers better. And to curate that conversation, we have these two gentlemen with us who will guide us through what's happening in the agency ecosystem. Let me start with Prashant. Prashant, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Naman. Hi, Sachin.
Prashant, it's great to have you.
Prashant, you took over Group M a little before the pandemic, roughly in 2019 sometime. And there were a lot of things going on. Even then, the digital world was storming through the media industry, the advertising ecosystem. And the pandemic has just disrupted everything in a very short space of time. Tell us a few things that agencies have gone through in the last 18 months. What's the significant change that has happened, which the pandemic has brought in, which might not have happened otherwise?
Yeah, that's a question which I think for now, people are probably pondering what happened in the last 18 months, right? I think a lot of things have happened. First of all, this was quite an out of syllabus for everybody. Right, I think every leader, every CEO, in 2020 around April realized that there's something different. Right, it's quite unique. I think a lot of things have happened. It has happened across consumers. It has happened across the entire landscape, evolving every single week at that time. Right, it has happened with all of us as people. Right, so whether you look at clients, whether you look at partners, whether you look at the entire landscape, including ourselves itself, right? If I were to really look at some of the aspects, I think it's already aware, all of us, that digital acceleration has been at the maximum, right? We were all in the working from home syndrome for a very long time. And that also gave in time, that also gave in bandwidth for people to be curious and try and understand more and more things. And digital became a big advantage there, right? So getting information, getting different data, trying out different platforms, content consumption across digital platforms, all of that came in, right? Including some of the products, some of the consumer behaviors, etc. started evolving, right? And that again is through discovery and being curious, including product availability, etc. became, and we all witnessed it ourselves, right? All that became a larger aspect of evolution. I would say that one of the aspects which probably become more important when we look from now is not just knowing the consumer, but also where do they belong, right? And what are the cohorts of consumers, right? The segments of consumers. I think if I were to draw in an example, if you look at some of the recent campaigns, Mondelez did, which is about knowing where the customer is, and not just knowing the customer, including the pin code, what do they do, what are the communities, etc., becomes handy in knowing the taste of the consumer and targeting them, right? I think it's also important to know the consumer journey and not just the consumer strategy from there, because the journey itself was evolving. So that's the second point which you look at it, right? And as we discussed about digital acceleration, if we looked at the technology enablement on that, whether it is across platforms or whether different products which came in, all of that really got embraced in the form of consumer journeys, which was a lot of curiosity for all of us, and then drawing solutions for the brands and clients. And the third aspect which came in quite handy and useful is the entire relationship aspect. So consumer relationship at one end, relationship with our clients, because they are also part of the same journey. Yeah. They are also going through similar aspects. One thing that came in handy is the curiosity to learn the platform digital became a universal need, right? It's not just for one expertise. That really helped in terms of having different exchanges, and all that mattered was relationship there. This included relationship with our own employees, our own team, right? Because there you got to be in touch with them, you got to be connected. There were lots of things happening personally, professionally. So third aspect is focus on the relationships, whether it is from a consumer perspective or brand connected to the consumer, or the client practices, how it's transforming from their end, as well as our employees, right? I think we also saw a situation where, what we really embraced more is the new areas, the new habits, the new practices which started coming, whether it's the area of e-commerce, whether in the area of social commerce, whether it's the area of tech-enabled products, etc. that happened. I think they're, supporting and enabling the human factor, because it is, consumer is a human, so are we, right? From that aspect, developing them, skilling them, platforms across, right? Even including LinkedIn, where data, more than data, insights became more useful, and therefore using them and enabling them became very, very critical. And last, I would say all of this stood behind a lot of values, right? I think that is where the aspect of facing it boldly, getting courage on attempting to do new solutions, learning and experimenting them, the value aspect of working together, because the ecosystem needs to progress from that aspect. So these are some of the few learning we had, and I think now when we look at and we look behind, it's a great learning. I think it was a crash course of how crisis, and especially a global crisis in different footprints with different characteristics, can be looked at. I think it just adds on to the experience of how we look at different crises and find solutions, as well as create some great solutions for future.
Thanks. Sachin, let me just come to you now and tell us, you represent the platform side, and digital platforms have seen significant growth in the last 18 months. The momentum that was already there pre-pandemic has taken onto a different level. And you are at the forefront when it comes to connecting brands with their consumers. What are the significant changes you've seen in the last 18 months as a platform, the expectations agencies, clients have from you, and what are those changes which you think are here to stay?
Yes, first I want to say great context, PK. I think the 4 trends that you covered pretty much sums up what we have seen over the last 1 year. But as a professional platform, our vision is to create economic opportunity for the global workforce. So you can imagine it was never more relevant or important than in the last 1.5 or 2 years. That is entirely what we've been focused on. And there was a lot of product innovation, trusted information, insights, like PK said, that we shared with the workforce so they can adopt to the new normal. So there's a lot of new launches that we've done. For example, company tab, we have new job titles, a ton of launches that have happened over the last 2 years. And then on the platform usage front, PK covered this again, but massive digital acceleration is what we've seen. So we are now 800 million plus members across 200 countries. And you'll be amazed, but every minute 130 new members start on the platform. There are 10,000 new connections. 4 job hires are made every minute on the platform. So massive acceleration there. But I think as a platform, we were very conscious. And again, this is something that PK alluded to, is that the values and the background with which we've always served our members, we kept them at our forefront. So factual information was shared with the members. We had to do a lot of product innovation to deal with the new normal, which is hybrid and remote work, and how people would interact with each other and within their organizations and outside their organizations. So that's been the focus over the last 1 year. In terms of the last bit that PK said, is that there's been a massive acceleration, but it's still not back to normal. So I think we are very conscious that we'll continue to innovate and see where this is headed over the next few months.
Fantastic. And there's a lot of headroom to grow still. Digital has grown significantly, but as you mentioned, there are 30 people coming online on LinkedIn every minute, and there are still many people who are not onto the network yet, so the headroom for growth is significant. PK, let me come back to you and ask you something about what's happening as far as the consumer journey is concerned, and some of the conversations I've had with brand CEOs over the last 18 months tells me that in many ways reaching out to consumers has become both easier and difficult. When I say difficult, more complex, right? So can you tell us, because you deal with brands across multi sectors, you deal with consumers who are across all media, content, you are also into content curation. In what ways do you think reaching customers has become easier as well as more difficult / complex?
Yeah, it's a good situation to be, I would rather put it, because when the pandemic happened, it came with a lot of challenges, but it also threw in a lot of opportunities, right? And enablement of technology to answer some of the solutions, whether it is reaching consumers or engaging, came with some easy solutions as well as some complex solutions, right? A lot of working with platforms, like Sachin mentioned, helped in collaborative understanding about where the journeys are going, right? How are the tastes evolving? How do we get to reach them, etc. I think the so-called old or pre-COVID formula of looking at only compartmental media-wise planning or media-wise thinking moved away and moved into the modern marketing way of approach, right, on reaching consumers. This means that accountability, ability to see outcomes and therefore match with that became a primary priority for clients and for brands, right? So platforms really helped in terms of understanding that, and I think the way the plans and the thinking was going on is to see how the reach can be more effective and outcome based, and not just from an efficiency perspective, right? Because efficiency also meant how wastage can be taken off, right? Adding that advanced solution, as I mentioned earlier, is where are the segments, right? And knowing them more, where the technology platform also gave solutions or opportunities to know them more, helped it, right? Otherwise, I think it was a pretty much game, because as we talk about consumer, you yourself are part of that. And there were many platforms coming and discovery happening during that time, whether it's in the area of distribution, whether it's the area of social commerce, or in the area of influencer marketing, right? When I look at 7-8 years back and look at all the solutions that you would draw to a client's task, you might probably have about 6 to 7 solutions.
That's right.
That has probably exploded to some 15, 20 of them, right? We probably did not have the influencer marketing as one of the key solutions at that time. But now I think brands probably leverage them unilaterally, some of the brands, and make it useful for the outcomes that they require. So that again is basis the reach perspective. So the looking at reach, whether it's mass or it is very concentrated universe of consumers, that itself became as part of the brief or the thinking. That's how the thinking on reach itself has changed, right? So this again, I would think that the scaling up of some of these products and the solutions is happening as we speak. I think somewhere this itself is evolving, right? I would also feel some of the emergence of newer solutions that can come out of it. You touched base on the content perspective. I think the entire advancement on how content should be looked at from communication perspective is itself as an evolutionary space. A lot more personalization, a lot more ability to at the same time real-time basis talk to different consumers. Technology emerged, which again is bringing the engagement to consumer much more effective. So all of this is actually a very exciting space, right? Some of them actually for all of us, and when I look at more and more, is applicable to our own organization because our own employees are in a way trying to learn most of this. So it's a great learning. I think a lot of unlearning and unlocking value for brands are coming through many of this new, modern marketing approach.
Fantastic. I'm going to come back to this learning, unlearning bit a little later. Let me jump back to Sachin now. Sachin, as I mentioned at the beginning, you are at the forefront of, what's happening with consumers. Digital has had significant uptick because of pandemic, but it's also made life very challenging and complex for digital platforms per se. There is fragmentation. There are multiple platforms where consumers have to spend time. So keeping the engagement going and making sure that you are relevant, because in the digital world you are only as relevant as yesterday morning. So how do you make sure that your relevance and the engagement keeps going up when every day there are newer and newer platforms launching?
Absolutely. So back in 2020, when the impact and scale of the pandemic became apparent, first thing we realized is that our members were actually flocking to trusted sources of information. And so both content creation, content sharing spiked massively, which is also something that PK covered, is the digital acceleration piece across platforms and across social primarily. Now, one of our strengths always have been that we've taken a members first approach, and we've also been globally the most trusted platform for the last 6 years. So there was a lot of goodness that we could share with the members. But yes, we had to do some product innovation. We had to figure out ways of how we can scalably share trusted information with them that they could rely on. So that is what we've solved for. Also, coming back to one of the points that PK raised, very, very interesting, is around influencer marketing. So you would see that there are new influencers from a professional perspective that we've onboarded over the last few years. And that has happened globally, not just in India. So that's the other bit of acceleration that we brought in. Some members could get access to the information that they were looking for. But just to give you an idea, we've seen about 29% year-over-year growth in public content sharing on the platform. And it has not been easy, because as the members and as our customers were going through the pandemic, this painful journey, we tried to partner with them. But like PK said, internally, our own teams were going through the same journey. And it was just so chaotic. Yeah. It was very difficult to have the agility to innovate on the fly and to build products and services that cater to our members. So it has been a great learning experience for sure. One of the things I really liked about what PK said is the partnership that, say, a Group M agencies have had with networks. And the idea for that was to share factual, trustworthy information and use relevant insights to cater to not just our consumers, but also to brands. Now, one of the things about this pandemic, and a lot of research has gone into this, is as brands look at emerging from this cycle, from this economic cycle, partnerships and trusted partnerships are going to be very important, which brings in the element of trust. And what we've realized is 70% of purchase decisions by the consumers is actually linked to the trust that they have in an entity. In fact, there's a great recent Harvard study that's been published. 2 key drivers of trust that we've realized is, one's competence, so both technical competence and social, the environment that you operate in, how well do you innovate, and the other is ethics. And a lot of communication, a lot of our partnership with Group M, for example, has been about how do we help brands be vocal and communicate the values their culture and their work modalities and operations to build that trust with the audience as they try and look at economic recovery. So from a consumer perspective, yes, massive acceleration to answer your question, but we've had to innovate in parallel, and we are still obviously grappling with a lot of problems that this industry is facing. But also on the brand side, on the marketing side, great partnerships. The data that we have access to, all of us has helped cater to some of their needs.
Yeah, very important point, Sachin, you mentioned there, and I think the pandemic has kind of opened a complete Pandora's box. I recall during last year, the first lockdown, there was so much news floating around, and one would typically bank upon credible, trustworthy, reliable sources of information for any news about how the pandemic was spreading. And digital platforms, because of the way they've mushroomed in the last few years, I think trust and credibility has become a very, very important aspect, which kind of segregates the reliable platforms versus the others. And a lot of brands, you work with brands across so many sectors, they are also extremely conscious of the fact that they need to be present on platforms that are credible and that are trustworthy. What's your experience with clients when it comes to working with platforms which have trust and credibility? And I ask this question for a reason, is that there is a saying always in content and journalism, any news is good news, right? But at the same time, when you're looking at news which might not be true, fake news has become such a big menace online these days. On one hand, brands are seeking reach, higher engagement. On the other side, you also don't want to associate with something which is kind of not trustworthy. So it's a very thin line you're walking.
Yeah.
How do you make sure that you continue to walk the thin line without falling on either side?
I think as we all discussed, it's not, during the pandemic, this issue is not just a pandemic issue.
That's right.
This has always existed. I think trust and integrity is a lot of value that drives any content and also enables ambience for brands to communicate with consumers. What probably we witnessed is, because we were spending a lot of time with ourselves, with our families at home, and probably there was a lot of consumption of content starting from our children to our parents and our grandparents. And they had all different platforms, from digital platforms to TV to newspaper to radio and multiple aspects, right? And of course, it was not an easy context because the pandemic itself was not a very challenging one. And we have seen how different countries have started using that for their own progress and dealing with the pandemic in different forms, from digital platforms, content, etc. That too happened during this time. When we look at our clients, I think every single client today has only got more educated from all these happenings, right? And educated because they themselves got involved into it as a consumer as well as a practitioner. Now that enables us to study this and talk to them and discuss and co-create what are some of the good, really purposeful aspects for any campaign which should happen. So many of the first which we look at is observing, learning them, right? Formulating some benchmarks, understanding what is it, talking to platforms, talking to partners, aligning with them on some of the principles that we should look at, talking back to the clients, understanding what is this and therefore leading with it, and therefore collectively trying to build the trusted marketplace for the entire ecosystem. So clients value this in a very primary form. I can say today that more partners and existing partners also value this in a very progressive manner. I think all this enables us to have right conversations, right solutions, and bring in that aspect of trust and integrity into the solutions. And we are seeing this progressing very well. Benchmarks have been useful, many of the tools have become useful, many of the data insights which partners provide, just like LinkedIn, which Sachin mentioned, they become useful when you do discussion with clients. So I think it's a progressive space, but yeah, the ambience is something which I think every content owner will also look at how it can value back to the consumer first, and then how it can be leveraged for brands to communicate with consumers.
Yes, especially since most of the brands aspire to be brands of purpose. I think being on platforms where brand safety is ensured has become even more important. I will take this question to Sachin with a slightly different view, Sachin. And again, you work with a large number of agency partners and brands. In your sense, what is the importance brands are now increasingly attaching to things like brand safety, credibility of data, ad fraud? Ad fraud has been a conversation we've been having for the last few years. Digital has grown significantly in the last few years, and increasingly more and more brands are investing money on digital. Viewability, measurability. What's your sense of what is the kind of conversations, importance that brands are now giving to these conversations?
Yeah, now the interesting point is because of the digital acceleration that we've seen over the last 1.5 to 2 years. I loved it when PK said it's all family members now consuming information and data at an increased pace. And because of that, there's been a lot more focus. But some of these issues predate the pandemic itself.
That's right.
And so we've always at LinkedIn, we've had a members first approach. And that means every decision we make, every product feature, innovation that we do, and when we have to make trade-offs, most importantly, we always keep members as our most important priority. So that hasn't changed. And in partnership with agencies, and I know a lot of cutting edge work has actually happened at Group M in terms of privacy, in terms of trust. Some of these partners bring that insight and knowledge to us. But one of the principles that we are driven now is privacy by design, which means everything that we design, every new feature we roll out, we have to be conscious and respectful of the fact that we sit on a massive heap of first-party data that these members have willfully shared with us. Right? So for example, if you look at LinkedIn as a platform, a lot of people are building these profiles and giving out this information, and therefore the responsibility or accountability to use this meaningfully. Yes. But yes, we've seen a lot more interest, and that's the direction you will see us going in. The other great point that PK raised was this trusted marketplace concept. And what I would like to underline there is the importance of doing this collaboratively with partners across the ecosystem. So it's not just one platform that's probably going to solve this. One is it's an ongoing journey, and all of our innovation, all of our thinking, we are collaborating very actively with partners, with third parties. We're trying to bring in the stakeholders to try and see eventually what does the final outcome look like, but with our members as the core focus area. So how do we solve for their privacy has been top of mind at LinkedIn forever. I think we have a slightly advantageous position because of the access to the first party data. As more privacy related regulations come into effect and some of these industry changes take effect over the next few years. But I think that's one of the other reasons that there is a lot more thought introspection at LinkedIn of how we want to use that. But yes, we are going to partner with the agencies. You will see a lot more focus on this. And I think eventually this landscape will evolve over the next few years.
Yes, and very interesting things have come out, like PK said. Pre-pandemic, we had, so-called compartmentalization. This would be your sources for news. These would be your sources for entertainment. This for sports. This for non-fiction. Now that sort of compartments are gone, almost every platform has become source for information. Almost every platform is source for entertainment. So, if you're consuming so much news from so many platforms across the board, brand safety, the credibility of the platforms is also become extremely important. Let me come now to the post-pandemic world as we come out of COVID, and hopefully the worst is behind us. We've seen, PK, you've done a bit of restructuring as well as created sort of new verticals within your company. We saw news few days back, you created something called Group M Services. You've appointed somebody in charge. You've doubled down on content curation, what you're doing with clients in that area. Can you tell us give us a glimpse of what's happening across various verticals in Group M, and as you come out of the pandemic, how you're restructuring and how are you looking at the post-pandemic world in terms of how an agency ecosystem will be structured for the client?
I think I don't know if I can still say post-pandemic, though I would like to happily mention that. But yeah, we are there, right? I think for us, everything is in the area of driving benefits to our clients, right? And partners, right? So it's an ecosystem, and since we are fortunate and blessed to be a leader in the market, I think there's a lot of responsibility to ensure that we look at from that context. During this last 18 months. And this is not something, I can't say that we didn't plan any of this or we didn't have any of this in mind. But I think just like a lot of things got accelerated, this is also an opportunity to look at how we can be more effective, how we can have specialism and leverage that, how we can contribute to newer radical solutions like commerce, data, insights, technology, as well as how we can collaboratively bring in all the solutions back to our current clients, as well as work with partners. You are right, specialism is an important word here, because I genuinely feel that there is only one expert. The expertise, as much as you expertise one specialism, you have to do that. There's only one way to do it, right? Playing a cover drive is like you have to have one way of playing a cover drive, right? Of course, hitting a 6, you can do multiple ways. So this is not hitting a 6, because hitting a 6 is in a different way, which you look at from an analogy. When you look at platform expertise, you need to focus there more. So how can we create more experts in different areas? How can we have different story aspects on the thinking and strategy, etc., as well as how can we drive benefits to our clients and therefore work along with a lot of partners became the core of how we do this. While all of this is happening, I think we should also embrace the point that transformation and growth go hand in hand. There is transformation happening in the consumer side, in the client side, and that is actually making us also transform. And growth is also going hand in hand, because all of us are trying to how we can progress. So what are some of the areas where you can bring in more specialism, where you can consolidate, bring in more benefits? What are some of the areas where your new tools and new ways of working can be looked at? All of this started applying. So we therefore came with, one is group of services, one of the areas which we focused and brought in more expertise, specialism, and working across. Some of the services, some of the products we launched, right? Looking at the technology aspect, as Naval mentioned, on the content aspect. So going beyond some of the only short format or long format and focusing more on platform related, video customization, all of that started happening. But I must say that when we're trying to do all of this, it's important to bring in together everybody, right? So as Sachin mentioned, working with partners enable, working with other partners in some of the areas enable the thinking to go even sharper and more stretched. So driving benefits to our clients become very, very critical, and we're able to do that, right? So we see a situation going forward for us where transformation and growth go hand in hand, right? And therefore, it is a necessity to keep the relevance of transformation, learn from it, observe, as well as apply it back into areas of growth. And that is where you see a lot more people coming together, applying the technology aspect, enable them, because I think as technology enables human, from that context, wherever effectiveness and efficiency can be obtained, I think that's what everybody is focusing on, which applies to our own industry. And we see that a very progressive journey so far, and a lot of exciting aspects coming in, so many co-created products with different platforms, so much of insights which can be looked at, and real-time aspects can be looked at. So I think all these new ways of working is making the excitement even more.
So let me come to some softer aspects of what's happened during the pandemic, and as we come out of it, what's likely to happen. PK, as I mentioned at the beginning, you took over in 2019 before the pandemic. What's been the toughest parts of being a leader in these last 2 years?
Frankly, there have been times when you are tough. Things have been tough, right? And sometimes during this pandemic time, I believe that we are all social animals. And sometimes you feel a bit more lonely. That to me is the most toughest time. So definitely I have my own ways of doing it. Those are some of the new discoveries. So you speak to your colleagues, you speak to your friends, of course you're with your family. I do have a pet, so I spend some time with my pet. All of that is important for all of us to sustain and drive ourselves out of this so-called crisis which we never knew, probably from any of our parents or our grandparents, right? So that's very important. So loneliness, how to get over it. But I must say that it's important, and to recognize first and accept that there is a challenge, right? Because by doing that, you open yourselves to trying many multiple things, and also bring your, original, genuine values up to leverage, right? So for me, collective thinking became extremely important, because this organization is a collective result of multiple talent, multiple leaders who have really brought in this journey of progress every month, every year, right? I think the sense of gratitude is very much from the bottom of my heart to all the people who advised within the organization, as well as all the people who helped. So my colleagues, including my bosses, including some of the partners, including many of the clients who were part of this journey. So the advices are very critical. And the moment you realize this, because you got to exchange some of this, because that gives an idea for somebody to jam and come with solutions, right? I would also say that, as this pandemic had a mixture of many challenging personally, professionally, across different people, let us not get distracted was something which I firmly believed, right? While emotionally we're connected to it and there full 24 hours, 65 days from that context, we should not get distracted, because the moment you get, it could be an issue that is sledging you, or it could be something else that is doing. But if you get distracted, then you lose the focus on what you're trying to do for the organization, for your people, and therefore to our clients, and therefore to our partners, right? So that's very, very critical. I think a lot of it has been a good experience, right? Though I must say that a lot of it also included things which we never wanted, right? But bringing, a lot of things, gems within ourselves, within our teams, were a great discovery. Of course, there are also some disappointments which happened, but I'm sure. But gems, discovering them, discovering the solutions, etc., became extremely, useful and encouraging in this journey. So well, there is more, but I think these are some of the key elements which I really felt, during this journey, and inspiring each other, right? A collective influence, being transparent and honest to what is happening. All that helped to carry along people to a direction, right, which we can do more and be progressive.
Yes, Sachin, you lead a fairly large team again as marketing solutions at LinkedIn. While on one hand, pandemic has delivered significant growth to the business, but the people aspects have been very difficult and very challenging last 18 months. A lot of us have gone through personal tragedies while trying to, keep focus on what's happening at work. What's your leadership style? How have you dealt with it personally as the team of the leader?
I would actually break this into two parts, and I think one part PK has covered really well, which is your leadership with the internal constituencies, which is your team, your partners, people that you interact with and work with every day. So a lot of gratitude for this fact, but we have very progressive leadership at LinkedIn, and it was very easy transition for us, because typically we worked from the starting point or culture of trust in our employees. So you would have seen some of these messages come out, but we went into a complete remote and hybrid work model, and we continue to be in that model. And of course, we've seen our results only get stronger over the last 1 year. So one aspect of this was with the team's internal, and I think what we are seeing right now globally is probably one of the biggest changes to hit the world of work, which is the people are not just questioning where and how they work, they're questioning why they work in the first place, and therefore the massive resignation drive and the flight of talent. But we at LinkedIn believe, we call it the great reshuffle, and we believe that this will eventually have very beneficial impact to the world of work and to the overall ecosystem. So we believe leaders have to lead with inclusion, with empathy, and you have to innovate on the fly. You have to really see what's working for your teams. That's exactly what we've done over the last 1.5 years. I also know that it's been very surprising for some, because people were not initially convinced that the business would continue to do as well in the new setting with the remote and hybrid environment becoming so mainstream. And it's very convincing and also promising to see that really the business hasn't suffered at all. Right? In fact, our employees, our teams, much more in a state of mental well-being, are able to contribute their best. And so we are taking a very gradual, very paced out approach to how we want to get back to the normal. And what the new normal looks like is also something we are trying to define. So that's internal. And then I think the other aspect of this is with the brands, with the marketers, and how we educate them. I spoke a little bit about this earlier, but brand hit home, close to the families, to the teams, but it has definitely opened our eyes about what's possible and how you can delegate and give more authority to people to figure out what progression and careers look like for them.
Oh, very well said, Sachin. And one of the, I think, important aspects that pandemic has brought about is the value of empathy and compassion, and the fact that businesses exist not just to make profit, but to contribute to society, to make sure society members are taken care of. Sachin, I'll let you have the last word. Tell us what's in store for us from LinkedIn next few years. What are going to be the focus areas, new products, solutions that you are looking to introduce?
We are very excited about the future, Naval, and as you know, PK has covered this multiple times in this conversation, but it's going to be more of digital acceleration. So you will definitely see a lot of features about how employees can work in a remote or hybrid environment, but still get the experience that you would get face to face. We've launched many new features like live virtual events. We've done a lot of innovation on our ad side, and that will continue to happen, while obviously looking at the privacy principles. But how do we share more information in terms of measurement, in terms of attribution? So some of those features are going to come up next. I think the last bit that I would say is that we are also seeing massive interest in learning and upskilling on the platform. So millions of people are signing up for courses. And so as we get to the end of this conversation, I would like to just reinforce what PK just said is, there isn't an opportune time or there isn't the best course that you should be taking. It is just a concept of, can you learn any new concept or go back and revisit a concept. So I think that is going to be very, very important for LinkedIn, because working professionals, right, they're now in a new environment. There are so many more opportunities. So obviously everyone wants to reskill and upskill, but that shouldn't come with any sense of pressure.
That's right.
So that's what we are looking forward to, and you will continue to see a lot of new features, new innovation. Personally, last 1.5 years, I've spent a lot of time with my 7-year-old daughter, and I got to revisit Hindi Akshar. So I finally realized that yes, there is still time for me to learn something that I wasn't ever able to learn. So that's the positive note for you.
Fantastic. Thank you, gentlemen. And like a lot of people say, the important thing in life, as in business, is to continue to make mistakes. That's the only way to grow. You should be worried if you're not making mistakes. Doing is most important, getting out and doing it. Get an opportunity to meet you in person, and this is an on-ground initiative. Thank you, PK. Thank you, Sachin, for spending time. You're free to shoot your questions to us, and we'll take them to PK and Sachin. Till then, goodbye, and I hope you enjoyed the session. You're on mute.
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute. Thank you so much, Naval, and thank you, PK and Sachin, for taking out time. I think we are here, and over to you, Manoj, for the most interesting panel we've been waiting for.
Thank you so much, Santosh. That is indeed a very interesting discussion. Hey, everyone, and welcome to this panel discussion. Today, we're going to have hopefully a very interesting conversation with some veterans from the agency space in India. So if I could request Bharat, Chandni, and Aditi to switch on their video so that we can kick off with introduction. Hey Chandni, hello Aditi, hey Bharat.
Hi guys.
Welcome to this panel discussion. I think we'll let Vinod join whenever he can. But to kick it off, I really just wanted to start by introducing all of you and just looking at all your profiles. And I think, hey Vinod, welcome.
Hi.
Yeah, so I was just saying that I was looking at all your profiles, and between all of you, you guys have probably a century or more of experience in the agency space in India. So, across industries, brands, verticals of all shapes and sizes. And obviously you've seen the the media industry in India evolve. So hopefully, we'll get some very interesting insights from all of you. So I think to sort of, I just want to make sure I introduce all of you to the audience. So probably start with Chandni. So Chandni, you've founded Connect about 10 to 12 years ago, and which is obviously most recently partly acquired by IPG. So you're part of the IPG group now, and obviously work with some wonderful brands. So many congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Vinod, who's been again a veteran who's been with Group M in multiple roles across in sort of the WBP group in multiple agencies there across multiple roles, but most recently has moved to the CDO role at Dentsu, and is also the CEO of iProspect. So Vinod, congratulations on your new dual role, and welcome to the panel. And Bharat, again, who spent a lot of time with the WPP group, mainly with Success, building it up from grounds up for several years. And again, very recently has moved to a new role, the Chief Digital Officer, APAC for the Omnicom group. So congratulations on your new role again, Bharat.
Thanks.
And Aditi, obviously you've been with the Lodestar sort of group for a while now, and currently are in the Chief Strategy Officer role, and obviously you've done a lot of work working with several brands, devising and deploying product strategy and brand strategies across various industries. So welcome to the panel, Aditi, as well. Just to kick off, I thought I'll go around and just get a sense from all of you as to how you've seen the client agency sort of relationship evolve in India, particularly over the last 5 years or so, because there's so much has changed. Obviously, digital has become more important, content has become more important. So I just wanted to see from each one of your lenses through the agencies that all of you have led and the various brands you worked at, what are like maybe a couple of key changes that you observed? So maybe Aditi, we can start with you.
Sure. So I think in the last 5 years, what has fundamentally changed in the agency-client relationship is an increased desire for accountability. So, everybody is looking at agency partners to be accountable more from a business partnership lens rather than just the deliverables that they had in terms of media or in terms of pricing or in terms of content. So now clients are looking at agency partners to partner their journey with full accountability. And that has obviously changed the relationship, because in some ways it has become extremely strategic, because you are actually a much bigger part of the business planning that you now are contributing to versus perhaps what you were doing earlier. But at the same time, because of the increased pressures of business, there is a big ROI focus. So it's, I think, a dual kind of a challenge which agencies need to now work with clients as.
So, Aditi, do you think that has made life easier or more difficult for agencies as a result?
I think it's made life interesting because it also has forced all agencies to look within. Everybody has to now design teams which understand complete journeys. They need to not just look at one siloed piece of the pie, but see how everything is coming together. And that has helped, I think, agencies also figure out what are the areas they need to invest in, what are the kind of people, the talent, the tools. Data is the big buzzword now. Where all should we go as partners, and where all should we be focusing on to make sure that we do the best for our clients, I would say.
Makes sense. Thanks, Aditi. Vinod, your perspective on this?
Yeah, I guess initially, like you asked, Manoj, I guess what has changed, I think it's made the relationship much more stronger. The client agency are no more vendors or an agency. I guess now clients understand that we are more partners in business. The clients work with agencies, obviously, because they know that these are the agencies who also have skin in the game. And in the last 2 years, I guess, like I think Aditi mentioned, so rightly articulated, like it has become interesting, but at the same time, more accountable, right? The clients and the agencies work together, and I've seen in boardrooms working together, putting the entire business plans. While we understood that initially on COVID, there was no playbooks, there was nothing which was ready, but people have evolved, people have taken that into their stride. And currently, I think businesses have opened, clients are happy spending. Consumers, especially on digital, have grown exponentially, and we need to see all reports which are there in the market. Where is the next 500, 700 million coming from? I guess agencies and clients understand this, that it's together that we need to make sure that we evolve this medium to another level.
Do you see it moving more from a transactional relationship to like a true partnership where there is more skin in the game for agencies as well? Is that
I guess it's already a partnership. I won't say it's transactional anymore, because if you see that when we discuss business objectives and not only advertising or media, I would want to believe that it's going to be a partnership and not a relationship where, okay, you need to just execute my campaigns. It's much more strategic in nature. And because if you're relying on your client as well as the client is relying on the agency to make sure that we together achieve those business objectives, I guess it's an integrated partnership together.
Absolutely. Thanks, Vinod. Chandni, and again, I know that you're not sort of an independent agency in that sense anymore, but given your journey as an independent agency, is there a special lens you have in terms of how the relationship has evolved with clients?
Yeah. So, Manoj, what's happened for us is that initially when we started off, digital was just an amplification medium. You know, the mainline agencies would be cracking the creative communication, and digital was just supposed to be just uploading those pieces on YouTube, Facebook, and that's really the role that they were playing. Now what has happened is, especially after the pandemic, what has happened is digital has come into the forefront. And how, you know, the kind of contribution that a digital agency is having in a business or a CEO and a CMO's life has only changed. I think most CMOs now have a KPI of as to how much, what is the spend that they're doing on digital, how are they innovating on digital. In fact, some CMOs have said that humko nahi aata, please teach us how it's done, because we need to kind of make sure that we have our jobs in place. So what I'm saying is that it's really become a conversation in boards, in the CEO tables and the CMO tables, and digital has really come into the forefront from that standpoint. So the relationship has become far more integrated than before. I'll tell you, for example, like a lot of the marketing signals are now coming from digital. You know, when we're launching brands also, they're like, ek digital launch karte hai, let's see how it goes. You know, if this market is, if it's getting the right kind of reception, then let's go out there and launch the product in, you know, the XYZ cities. So a lot of marketing signals are coming from digital from that standpoint, and therefore, you know, contributing to the business. So I just feel like also digital is evolving really fast. So what's happening, it's not, you know, so agencies are becoming more critical because it's very difficult for the client side teams to keep up with the pace at which, you know, things are moving. So therefore, I feel like forget transactional. It's now very, very strategic and, you know, far more integrated than before. Yeah.
I suppose what you're saying is that given that digital skills have become hard to keep up with, you know, agencies and the ecosystem that has that, you know, we'll see brands and clients, or are you already seeing brands and clients become more dependent on them for those skills because it's hard for them to build those skills at scale, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's not that they aren't. I mean, if they want to go deeper and, you know, grow faster, then, you know, the agency dependency has definitely gone up from that standpoint.
Would you say that's true of some of the new age digital only brands as well, sort of who've come out of digital? Even do you think that dynamic is at play?
No, that's not the case. In those clients, I mean, they largely have their own digital teams where, you know, especially important services like performance marketing and all is kept in-house. But a lot of, you know, traditional businesses like brick and mortar companies, for them, this is a little bit of a journey.
Yeah.
So for them, their dependencies on agencies like us is pretty high. Yeah.
Makes sense. Thanks, Chandni. Bharat, I would love your perspective, especially from a more of a, how brands now or clients when they're dealing with agencies looking at, especially measurement, right? Given your background with Xaxis, is that changing? Has that changed a lot?
Definitely. I think most of the brands are right now, I would say, in between the two worlds of digital, one which exists right now and one which is there coming in next few months. And more or less, I think in my recent experience with all the global brands, regional brands, I think the first thing which they asked me in my new role is that how can you handhold us into the new Web 3.0 journey, and what are the disruptions happening? So more or less, I think brands are now bringing a lot of accountability and trust on the agency side to give them a vision and the future prospective approach that from a measurement sense, how these clean rooms will going to play, what is the role of cookie and identity depreciation, how is going to impact their business. Some of the brands are quite interestingly, I would say, taking a leap faith and moving very fast. Example, some brands are already doing what you say, the new conversion API pixel from Facebook, so that they're still able to track the conversions at this stage and do a A/B testing before things go out on that way for India as a market. And most of the brands are also, I think, relying and trusting agencies to bring certain type of a knowledge from different geographies. So considering most of the holding companies manage brands globally, regionally. So I think there is a lot of learnings which we get from other markets where we have already seen an impact, like of a US or a China. And similarly, I think measurement is again becoming a quite critical element, not just for digital, but I think the overall holistic media measurement, because some of the old school media mix modeling is currently now being outdated. And again, now digital bringing more solid walls, not allowing brands to actually export any sort of data, is bringing more challenges around what is the future of measurement. So there are ways in which brands are now thinking about how to use certain tools which actually give predictive modeling type of approach so that they can predict the customer churn ratio or any lifetime value. Plus, I think there are frameworks in which as agency groups are working with the big giants to create some sort of proprietary technology so that the brands can start exploring these technologies at an early stage and become a clear winner in the measurement game.
Makes sense, Bharat. Thanks for that. So I'd like to just double click a little bit on the branding or brand building part of it in particular, right? And I think more in the context of what's happened in the last 18 to 24 months, without mentioning the big C or the big P as we call it. But how has that shaped how brands are or how companies are approaching building brands? Like is sort of the full funnel approach gaining more traction, or are brands seeing the value of, or are companies seeing the value of branding leading to demand gen, like as a more natural consequence rather than the curse of digital, which has been like measurability, and hence we will only spend on what we get immediate value for. So just in that context, and in the context of what's happened in the last 2 years, would love each one of your thoughts, and if there are examples of brands who have done some clutter breaking work that you could quote or share, that'll be wonderful. So Aditi, what are your thoughts on that?
So interesting question. As you know, obviously the last 18 months has transformed everybody. So both as as companies, as people, as consumers, everything has changed. And one of the big things I think which has impacted brands is this whole need to be much more authentic in their communication, much more real in terms of what they are going out to the consumers with. And in a sense, it has almost become like authentic stories but faster told. Because at the consumer end, what has happened is everybody is looking at convenience and speed. And the traditional journeys, and it's very different across categories, like Chandni mentioned, when we talk about traditional players and how people may be buying things at retail versus an online player, the whole world has in a way merged for a lot of consumers. What you could buy online, you also can buy offline, and people are moving very fast. And for brands to service them or to reach out to them, their messaging, their communication also has to pan both these worlds. So that is one big change I think that we are seeing in a lot of clients. So while for the same client, on one hand, you are going the precision path and you are deep diving into a lot of data like Bharat was talking about, but at the same time, you need to tell a story which is compelling, because that part of the world and how a consumer buys a brand has not gone away. And that is putting pressure on the system, both in terms of where brands should focus and how they should I would say deploy their monies, because both of them need their own investments and the fact that you need to do it over a period of time. So that is one challenge that we are seeing, I would say, across brands. The other difference which has happened is that while everybody has become a lot more digitally savvy than they were before, but the experience that people get is quite different. So we can design wonderful creatives, but how it is delivered to a person in a Mumbai or a Delhi is quite different from what a person in Bhilwara sees, for example, both because of the device that they have, the connectivity or the bandwidths that they have, and the language that they consume the content in. And that again is something which is putting the pressure back on brands, saying how do you straddle these two worlds together, but at the same time create meaningful connections. So that is what we have been seeing, I think, in the last 18 months. There are brands which have been successful. I would say, especially if we look at brands in the CPG space, which are dealing with essentials, I think they have had a good run for multiple reasons. But at the same time, when you look at brands that we work on, which are in the travel or the lifestyle category, those are obviously being challenged because of business reasons. Interestingly, there are other categories which have picked up, like payments, or maybe in auto EV, which has come, a long way suddenly, because everybody has become very conscious about what is their impact on the world. And with COVID impacting livelihood, everybody is reviewing their financials and where should they be investing their money as consumers. So there are trade-offs to be made. And this is one place, I think, where people are seeing a trade-off. So that's, I think, in a broad view, the changes that the last 18 months have brought in our lives. And I would say more in the lives of brands.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes sense, Aditi. Just picking on from what Aditi said, your perspective on what has happened in the last 18-24 months, but then also, as Aditi talked about, Bangalore versus Bhilwara, obviously the audiences in each of these places have different aspirations also, but more importantly, different value to a brand, right? I mean, eventually it's what they value a particular consumer in a location as, but then they also have to build a universal brand. A lot of the, let's say retail or even, financial services brand. So what are your thoughts or what have you heard and seen from brands?
Yeah, so Manoj, I'll break this up into two. I guess it's a long question, but let's take the first part, which you asked about in the last 18 months to 24 months, how is branding and how are brands developing, right, on digital? I guess what exactly spoke about in the last one, right? It's all about, making sure what your client objectives are. And I'll dwell upon this, what I mean. Gone are the days in digital where we used to talk about there is a branding and there is a performance. I think it's a very thin line which divides the both anymore. It's I was in one of the boardrooms and it was very nicely articulated by the CMO himself. He said, what I need from you is what would be my growth plan. Now, you could definitely say whether depending on categories to categories, right? It could be an FMCG versus an OEM versus auto manufacturer and things like that. It depends on what your core KPIs are, and hence the digital planning or strat, like we say, would be based on that. So some cases could be heavily inclined towards the top of the funnel, which we talk about brand, and then getting into e-commerce and hence getting into performance as well. In certain cases, when we are talking about pure play transactions, pure play downloads, it could be performance. But then we have seen some of the D2C companies which started with digital performance have now gone back and doing traditional advertising. So like I said, it's a very, very thin line as to how you divide branding and performance between both. I guess it only depends on objectives of the client, what we are wanting to deliver for that year for the client, and so on and so forth. Seeing the changes in digital, seeing how measurable digital is getting, and Bharat spoke about it in this earlier section. I guess more and more brands are looking at digital investments, the media share changing from traditional to digital very soon. I would now try to focus on the second part of the question, Manoj, which you spoke about different audiences looking at advertising communications differently. We know that the next 500, 700 million would come from the so-called Bharat, which we talk about, right? Which is your tier 2, tier 3. And hence communication, hence devising a strategy for them is that much more critical. And in the last 1.5, 2 years, we've seen platforms coming up to address only those requirements. So as a client, as a partner agency, I think what we also recommend is there should be a mix depending on what your audience is actually consuming. So, and today we can actually talk about audience targeting thanks to the kind of latest technology which digital has bought, thanks to, the kind of trustworthiness on brands, on content. There are very, very measurements which are coming out on brand safety and other things. I guess it's that much more critical when we are talking to a tier 2, tier 3 audience to talk to them in their language, which they understand the most. And you will see far degree of maybe a brand salience or performance, depending again on the objective of the client. I guess it's category to category, but I completely agree that in your media mix, you should, like we always used to say, the 3 V's, right? The video, the vernacular, and the voice. You need to understand how do you interplay between them depending on where your target audience is at the moment. So if your target audience is tier 2, tier 3, and we know for sure that because of the kind of networks bandwidth, because of the kind of handsets they have, is it better to do vernacular and voice for them? Depending on the metro audiences, is it yet better to continue with English, or they say language targeting, depending on where they originate from, and videos for the metro audiences. So it's how you want to target your audiences depending on the markets and the TG the clients has. I hope I've answered the question. Sorry for the lengthy answer, but
absolutely, Vinod. I was just curious, Vinod. So when you think about tier 2, tier 3, what's the main change that brands have to look at? Is it more just the content and the language, or is it also the platforms that you want to reach those audiences on, or is the message also completely different?
All of the above, actually.
All of the above, okay.
So you select the platform based on what their reach is. You select the communication based on what your audience is. You select the technology, what best suits the kind of campaign and which gives you the best efficiencies. So right. I can't say one of the elements which you mentioned. I guess we will have to look at all of the above, and it's not difficult at all because of the latest programmatic, latest AI ML technologies, which we all are currently using for our campaign managements. I think we are seamlessly doing all of these things.
Makes sense. Thanks, Vinod. So Chandni, for you, I mean, just the main question which we talked about, what has changed or what is evolving in terms of branding. But secondly, I was very curious to know your views on some of these new age brands, which by the very nature of their services, which are more sophisticated. Let's say just taking examples, but Upstocks or Dream11 or some of these, right? They are never going to be like an Upstocks is unlikely to be a Bharat brand, right? It's not going to. It's at least to start off with, its audience is not that, but even they are relying very heavily on impact properties. I mean, you could say that, everybody has to be on cricket in India. So that's one way of looking at it, but they've sort of led with impact properties if you look at it, right? So can you maybe give us if you have any insights on what went wrong?
I feel like for these brands, the most important thing right now is to kind of capture market share, like for Upstocks or for Dream11. Market share is the game that they're playing. So how do you really do that? By increasing your search of, your voice in terms of the higher search volumes. So it kind of makes sense for them to do this from that perspective in terms of kind of really capturing market share. You know, that's what Cred has done. That's what Dream11 is doing. All of them are playing the valuation game, increasing their customer base as much as they can. So therefore, that marketing strategy makes a lot of sense.
Right.
Yeah.
I think just to add on this one, because it's indeed a very deep thought. What a lot of people ask, like why brands are investing on impact versus the regular digital. I think if you see the last 3 years, digital audience has become numb because the way we are consuming content, the attention span is going drastically down on all the platforms. And if you do some sort of there are now tools coming in which is doing the eye gazing movement engagement sort of on the creatives, on the plasmon, time of the day, what device you're consuming, what's the theme of the creative. So with these tools, if you do a little bit more research, I think live sports and impact property is still one of the medium which has high attention span compared to some of the social platforms, regular video content where ads are just running and the attention span of consumer is not as high as it should be to get into a brand recall. This is one key factor which is also bringing brand again to the old school thought that the live sports and the impact property, although there is a spillover, they are not a Bharat brand, and they do see that in next 5 years also that audience might not be able to catch up with their product offering or might not be get to evolve. But I think with that spillover also, the attention span is able to drive better ROI compared to the regular digital, where the ads are just spraying painting. There is viewability, which I would say half a decade back, we all started debating about whether the ads are viewed or not. But now the new currency that brands are looking is more on attention. Ads are all viewed, but is the consumer attentive enough to engage with the brand and with the ad?
Yeah, that makes sense, Bharat. So, I mean, you're saying that even in terms of effectiveness, some of these impact properties are beating. And especially I think given the increase in consumption digital, it makes sense. Chandni, just going back, like a couple of changes or trends you've seen in branding, anything outside what Vinod and Aditi mentioned?
So we are seeing a massive shift in terms of spends from traditional to digital.
Yeah.
A lot on the branding side of it. Before, digital used to be largely more bottom funnel focused. Now branding has become a significant pie from that standpoint. OTTs have become quite big from that standpoint. Like, you know, we just did a really large campaign for one of our clients, PhonePe, you know, on Hotstar. Really like significant spends compared to what, you know, clients have been spending on you know, digital. Yeah. Also, I feel like from another important trend that I'm seeing is, I'm going to state some examples because everything Aditi and Vinod have said are really the key trends that are there. So I'm going to just talk about, you know, how I'm seeing that happen on some of our brands. So like I said, spends are shifting, and I've seen that recently with PhonePe on OTT. Amazon is a client of ours. So for them, vernacular has become extremely important. It's about, you know, they themselves have launched in different languages. So, you know, so the idea is that, of course, they are going after the Bharat audience, and how do you really tap into that? So, you know, we really have, like, we've created like a performance a production unit just to create that level of personalization when it comes to banners, like 15,000, 20,000 banners, you know, created for a particular audience in that particular language, you know, really to ensure that that sort of messaging is going on. So, you know, vernacular is another, personalization of communication and agility of that communication. Both of these things have become extremely important as a trend. And a third trend that I'm seeing is influencer marketing. That is one trend also that, you know, nowadays, like whenever we are running any campaigns for our clients, influencer marketing is definitely like a part of the entire mix. So influence, like, and literally from everything from celebrities to regional influencers in a small, you know, tier 2 town, you know, like brands are deploying all of those strategies. You know, if they want to create impact, then let's go out, you know, go all out within, you know, celebrities. And if they really want to go, you know, deeper, they are kind of utilizing regional influencers also in terms of communication. Also, platforms are becoming really important. Like I'll tell you, for Amazon, when we're trying to tap into the Bharat audience, we're also looking at apps like Moj, Joe, MX Takatak. All of these apps are also becoming really important from that standpoint, because the content is, the Bharat is consuming that content largely. So, a lot of focus on the right kind of platform, communication, and therefore, and agility in terms of being at the right place at the right time. That's the game plan. So yeah, these are some of the trends, and some brands are actually deploying it really well.
Well, absolutely. I think vernacular is obviously a big trend, and I'm going to plug in the fact that LinkedIn launched in Hindi just last week as well. So clearly, it's something that everybody is investing in. I was just curious from an influencer marketing perspective, Chandni, is the measurement of effectiveness evolving, or is it just like you got X followers or on Instagram or wherever, and hence it's sort of in proportion to that, or is there more to that?
So there are tools that are, I think we use, Unbox Social and Chorus. I believe, I'm not really sure on the names of the tools, but I think these are the two tools that we use. But along with that, there is a lot of manual intervention also that goes in from our influencer marketing team to, and some of the properties that we suggest in terms of influencer marketing is, using of Instagram stories where there are clear swipe ups, and then we get them to tag the, website URLs. Therefore, you understand that, if this influencer did do, did you get enough swipe ups? Did you get enough traffic coming from your, Instagram leads? So
we measure engagement in various forms.
Yeah, we are. And we are putting unique links across all of these activities to ensure that we're getting some form of measurement. In fact, a very good form of measurement. It can't get better. Yeah.
Makes sense. Very interesting, Chandni. Bharat, coming to you, I know on the trends part, there's lots been covered. So, but if there is something beyond that you've seen, but I would really love to get your perspective, given your recent exposure to the region as such, APAC. If there are anything that's unique, or what are the nuances between India and some of the other regions, if there are, if you could give us some insights on that from a brand building perspective.
I think I completely echo whatever thoughts Aditi, VT, and Chandni has already covered, and definitely on the short form video, whether it's the Bharat sort of video content or the India content on Instagram Reel, the social commerce is picking up, and there are learnings from other markets how they see social commerce getting developed. There are big learnings what we have in China or in Australia within the region, where we have seen how brands are doing end-to-end measurement on the social commerce piece. And this actually one of the medium which I would say fits in a good position, both on the top funnel, driving that brand comms, video narrative, creative engagement, content, and definitely on the lower funnel also, because brand can easily measure whether the influencer has drive any sort of sales or what type of conversion models they can build in. So there is a good ROI mechanism which the social commerce has brought into the game. So that's one element. Rest, I think on the India side, if I see from other markets and India, there is a big catch up which we are doing on the connected TV side. So there is around about 8 to 10 million devices in India. And if I compare with other markets, all the ratio is quite big. But the learnings what we get from other advanced markets, we've already seen the curve from linear to connected TV. It's clearly that how agencies come on board and help brands into creating a marketing plan which is single view of consumer, whether the consumer is watching on linear or connected TV. So there are ACR panels which are being developed in most markets for you to understand what content consumer are watching in. And with this connected TV space, which is primarily metro phenomena right now in India, I think the brand marketing is getting evolved. So recent example is we did a Skoda Kushaq launch in India, and we had learnings from our UK team, how they did that launch on an Amazon in UK. So the whole element of we doing that launch in India was not just to take the learnings from there, but we identify that India as a market, we're still a Fire Stick market heavily when it comes to the CTV. So we partnered with Amazon Fire Stick, created a engagement sort of a creative on the masthead of Amazon Fire Stick. So when the consumer launched on the day of the launch of the car, they were able to engage with the creative, and using the same Amazon feature of how you rotate the interior, exteriors of the car, the consumer was able to see a 360 view of a car on the connected TV. So that's actually give you a purpose of engagement driven top of the funnel branding. But end of the day, because you're measuring who are these consumers, you have the login IDs and all, you can again do a remarketing into the lower funnel, understand whether the leads was filled and whether the consumer has reached to a test drive stage or have they bought the car. So that way, I think new frameworks of marketing are being developed, and India is also, I think, at a fast pace catching up this new, I would say, device way of doing a holistic planning. And currently, when we see, I think last quarter Kantar released a report which says in rural also digital is now the second most consumed medium next to TV, and how in India we are now seeing the lines getting blurred between connected TV and the OTT consumption on mobile device. So this is again a good phenomena for India to understand that how these two worlds still sit in a different environment in silos, but how as a brand you can see into a single view of consumer, understanding what content they're consuming on different platforms.
Yeah, I do remember seeing the Skoda creative on Fire Stick. It was pretty interesting. Thanks for that, Bharat. So as we look to wind up, I'm going to put all of you on the spot a little and maybe just ask all of you to name one trend, theme, call it what you may, that's going to be big in 2022, right? Or, let's say like 22 and 23, like the next year to 2 years. So Bharat, what do you have in mind?
I would say unlocking the value of first party data.
First party, yeah. Okay. Chandni?
Personalization of communication.
Personalization makes sense. Aditi?
I think agility of data usage, because there is data everywhere, and that's the challenge I feel with digital. We have lots of data, but how are we agile in using it on one single place? I think that's the big thing which is going to happen.
Makes sense. Vinod?
I think a marriage between the ad tech and martech. That's something which can really create magic. And that's exactly what I feel that an agency and a client partnership can do. I'm just going back to the first question which you asked, Manoj, just to close the circle. I guess that's where the value of partnership comes together.
Makes sense. Awesome. Thank you so much, all of you. I really appreciate your thoughts and insights, and thank you so much for the time, Aditi, Vinod, Chandni, and Bharat. Hopefully the audience will find this interesting and insightful as well. And hopefully, all of the themes that you mentioned play out over the next year to 2 years. But it's interesting times. And I know we said we want to talk a little bit about cookieless as well, but then we also realize that it's a 800-pound gorilla, so it's not going to get covered as part of one panel. But hopefully we'll find time to talk about that in the future as well. Thank you so much, all of you. And I think that also brings us to the end of our Agency Connect event. And thank you to everyone who joined in today. So thank you.
Thank you, Manoj.
Thank you.
Manoj.
And thank you to the LinkedIn team. Thank you very much. And to the Exchange for Media team as well. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Stay safe. Bye-bye.
Cheers.